Hi everyone, thank you very much for joining us on another episode of Startup Talks. Today's episode is once again very special, like they all are. God has been great that way that a lot of important personalities they have been on the show up until now. We are joined today by Ahmar Abbas. He is an IT expert with decades of experience based out of the US. He is currently the CEO of XtremeLabs, a digital learning platform providing all sorts of learning material for those who want to get on to the digital or technology space. Before that, he'd been the vice president at Dices, started his career with Intel, been with Blackboard and CSS Corp as well. The list is too long to list. I hope he wouldn't mind. But we'll have a chat with him and leave the best parts for him to talk about. So, Assalamu alaikum, Amar Saab, how are you doing?
Good, good. Assalamu alaikum, Tim. We're doing well. Thank you.
That's great, sir. Thank you very much for joining us on the show. How's it going in Washington?
It's good. We're in the middle of our cold winter season, so the snow hasn't started, but it's quite cold, and but otherwise it's quite well here. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. So, Amar Saab, starting off with your own personal journey, first of all, you started off from, I believe, an Air Force school in Pindi, right? And decades later, you are now sitting in Washington. How's it been? What took you there?
Yeah, as I said, my father was in the Pakistan Air Force for 34 years. I had the opportunity to live all over Pakistan and go to all different Pakistani Air Force schools and air bases. I did my metric from the Pakistan Air Force School in Chiklala in Rawalpindi. And then I said, look, I've been living sort of in a nice, comfortable life within the Air Force community, so I should explore, I guess, civilian life, for lack of a better word. So for my FSC, I went to FG Sir Syed College, which is right in the mall on Rawalpindi. And there, a group of us started exploring opportunities to go study in America. And I selected a university in New Jersey called Stevens Institute of Technology, right across the river from Manhattan. And they had a very interesting program at that time. So we're talking about 1988. And their program had two elements. One was that in 1988, every student was forced to buy a computer. So you had to sort of come with a computer. All the dorms were networked. So we're talking about 1988, where we had email, we had internet connectivity in every room in our university. And the third thing was that they had a program called the Cooperative Education Program. And what that meant was that I would go to school one semester and then I would work one semester. And then I would come back to school and then I would work again. So those things were super attractive to me. So I joined at the institute, studied electrical engineering, and then also minored in social science. And during that same process was also sort of, as I mentioned, alternating work in different companies. So I got an opportunity to work at Intel. I got the opportunity to work at United Airlines. Got the opportunity to work at MCI, which is one of the largest cell phone companies. I got the opportunity to work at BSF, or American Cyanamid, which is one of the largest chemical companies at that time. So got a very strong sort of corporate base right out of college. And that helped me get my first job. So as a foreign student, a lot of the jobs, at least in that time when I graduated, were off limits to foreign students. So if you wanted to work in aerospace, you couldn't get a job there because you're a foreign student. You had to be a citizen or have a green card. but because I had joined the co-op program, I had almost 2 years of experience. When I graduated from college, I was able to get recruited actually onto Wall Street. So my first job was building networks for Solomon Brothers, which was at that time a very large investment bank. And then subsequently, they got acquired by Citibank, and then Citibank sold them off to Morgan Stanley. So they're still around, but under different names at that point. And so that was sort of a great experience, worked in finance and for a few years. And then a couple of people that I used to work with decided to sort of leave Solomon Brothers and go work for, at that time, an internet startup called UUNet. So to give you a little bit of a history, internet was actually built and set up by the US government, by their Defense Research Organization. And up until 93 or 94, it wasn't commercialized. So you actually still had to work with the government to get an internet connection. In 93, 94, 95, that's when the commercialization started. This company called UUNet, which I had never heard of in my life, was actually one of the first companies that commercialized the internet. So because my seniors were going there, they called me up one day and said, "Look, you're coming with us." I said, "Okay." And I just followed them. I didn't know what my job title was going to be, didn't know anything, but I trusted my colleagues, and I sort of joined them, and we had a phenomenal time, about 5 years, building sort of the core of the internet in the US, in Brazil, in Argentina, in Hong Kong, in Singapore, and Australia. So I got a really phenomenal experience doing that. And then subsequently, sort of had the opportunity to work in Silicon Valley because the thought was, look, if everybody is hopping onto the internet, then there's going to be a lot of requirement for networking devices. So I moved to Silicon Valley, worked for a couple of startups in the Valley. Then I started my own startup, primarily focused on something called grid computing at that time. That was a precursor to cloud computing. And so I spent a lot of time in kind of looking at the technology, looking at the market opportunities. And then one of the publishers came to me and said, "Look, you've done so much work on this, just write a book on it." So I ended up writing a book on grid computing called Grid Computing, A Practical Guide to Technology and Applications. And again, this was just a labor of love. I didn't think it would go anywhere, but it ended up being one of the most popular books on grid computing in universities. So if you were taking a computer science course in your 4th year, or you were taking a computer science course in your master's program, and you're studying distributed computing, this book ended up being one of your textbooks that you might be using. I finished it in 2004, and it's still being used in a lot of universities around the world. So 17, 18 years later, it's still pretty popular. And then I sort of moved on, had the opportunity to take all that learning and build a cloud environment for a learning management company. And that actually allowed us to bring in sort of millions and millions of students to be able to use learning management systems seamlessly from anywhere in the world. And that was sort of one of the first applications that you could consider as a software as a service delivery model, which is quite common now. And then after that, spent several years in sort of taking all these skills and delivering this capability that I had developed as consulting to a lot of large companies, whether it's ExxonMobil, the US aerospace organizations, Amtrak, a lot of different banks. So I spent a lot of time doing that for about 15, 16 years after that. And then as part of this exercise, I had acquired a company, and that company had built a side sort of project, which was a digital learning platform. They weren't selling it. It was really a project that they were doing internally. So once we acquired the company, we sort of looked at that particular business and said, look, we think there's some opportunity to build it out as a standalone company. And so I raised my hand and said, look, I'm going to spin it out and we're going to see what we can do with it. And that's sort of the genesis of XtremeLabs a few years ago. And since then, we've sort of been on a nice, healthy sort of growth path once we spun it out. So that's sort of a quick history. Hopefully it wasn't too boring.
No, it's actually very enlightening for me. It's professionals like you that we and everybody else should learn from. So, Amrita, what's XtremeLabs all about then? I was looking at it. There are lots of courses to be done. You were mentioning earlier something like about 12,000 hours of them, or something like that, and it's open for people to learn anything from AI to machine learning to programming in whatever language they wish to. What's XtremeLabs all about then?
Yeah, Tamil, the challenge is that there are a lot of talented people in the world, right? And then there are a lot of amazing jobs out there. But everybody seems to believe, and it's quite true, that there's actually a skills gap. So you've got a really amazing, talented group. You've got these amazing jobs, but the talented group is not necessarily skilled or has the capability to actually do those jobs that a lot of the vendors require or the companies want done. So XtremeLabs sort of steps in and specifically focuses on digital skills and says, well, how do we overcome the skills gap? How do we get these amazing group of talented people ready for the jobs of the future? Because we know they exist and they're coming really, really fast. And all of those jobs have one common element, that there is a level of digital education that you need. The challenge with digital education is that you cannot acquire digital education just by looking at a video or attending a class or even reading a book. You actually have to get hands-on into the particular technology, really, do it and practice it and become an expert, right? Just think of it this way. Would you, tell a pilot, okay, look, watch this video on how to fly an airplane, read this book, and now you're ready to fly an airplane, right? That doesn't happen. They spend hours and hours on simulators. They spend hours and hours on actual airplanes with other instructors before they're ready to fly an airplane, right? And that's exactly what we're trying to do in the digital technology space, to give people a platform where they can go and practice and learn and break things and experiment until they sort of master a particular technology. That's what XtremeLabs does. Today, if you sort of look at the global market, there's about 600 million people that are enrolled in secondary education. So these are people that are in your 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th classes, right? There are about 220 million people that are enrolled in different colleges. So if you combine all of those people, and then you look at the people that are already in the workforce, that's about 3 billion people around the world. You combine all of that number, that's about 4.2 billion people that really need to be ready for the digital world, right? And we are using our platform to get to as many of those people as quickly as possible so we can help them get ready for the future skills that they're going to need. So that's sort of the overall kind of market situation that we're trying to solve with the XtremeLabs platform.
You are obviously you've been connected to the digital world for many decades now, been involved in the IT industry with the grid computing earlier, and then with the cloud computing as well, and that is has taken the world by storm. There is a lot of shortage of skilled manpower all across the world, even in the US, even in Silicon Valley. The case is pretty critical in Europe as well, especially in the UK, where a lot of Big tech firms have opened up regional hubs in London and other cities in the UK as well. And everybody like Facebook and Google and Amazon and all the lot of big tech, they are it's not blaming them, but unfortunately they have to resort to um, grabbing talent from each other's organizational setup, because it's very difficult for them to actually find the right skill set. I was reading somewhere the other day that if you're an expert, a Python expert, right, it's very easy to draw a salary of something like 120,000 or $30,000 a year. That's in the US. So obviously, such high salaries when skilled labor is commanding such high salaries, there is obviously a lot of shortage. The same problem exists in Pakistan too. It's very difficult to find the right skill set. So, what, in your opinion, or what does XtremeLabs, if you, I know what it has to offer, but for the masses, whoever watches this, what does XtremeLabs have on offer? How can it assist them?
Yeah, so let me again address the thing that you mentioned about some of these larger companies and the people that they might be poaching or hiring. So the recommendation that we give a lot of our customers that are in similar situations is a little bit different. What we tell them is, look, what you have to do is you cannot expect a person to have everything that you want, right? So I've been in meetings where they'll say, look, we want a Python expert. He should be able to do amazing API programming. They should know what chaos engineering is. They should also sort of be able to, understand different types of machine learning algorithms.
Mm-hmm.
So what we tell them is, look, the list that you're building is quite long and it's not necessarily practical. So what you should do is actually build a learning path for people. So you say, look, the base people that we want, should have this basic requirement. They should know Python. They might be intermediate level in Python, and then we're going to build them and grow them slowly, as over time. And that gives the opportunity for you to now actually recruit from a much larger pool of people. So you bring them in, they may know basic sort of Python, they might be intermediate level Python. Then you train them up into sort of the next iterations of different types of technology. And at any given point in the learning path, they're still productive members of your organization. So they're not sort of off in some room training and not sort of participating in the day-to-day business, but they are in each element of the learning path that they are put on, they're actually producing. So you have learning paths for, it could be for programming, it could be for cybersecurity, it could be for cloud computing, and you put people, all of them, through those different learning paths. Where XtremeLabs comes in is that we actually build the learning path for you, and then each element of the learning path, we're giving hands-on capabilities to the learner, so you can actually see whether they not only have textbook knowledge, but they have translated that textbook knowledge into being actually able to do the work. So if you can have somebody come in and sort of work on our platform, solve cybersecurity related issues, you'll actually be able to see whether they've mastered that particular topic or not. And if they haven't, then they just sort of go back and start again until they master it, right? So we're giving sort of extreme level of visibility into the capabilities and where capabilities for individuals stand at any given point in time during the learning path. So again, as I mentioned again, what it allows people to do, and enterprises and companies, people that are hiring, is to actually really expand the pool from where they can recruit. And and in many cases, because they're also sort of making some collateral investment into the people that they're hiring, they may not have to pay as high of initial salaries as they would if they tried to find some perfect person out there that may or may not even exist.
So is there any certification involved as well for whoever's coming out of XtremeLabs?
People that sort of use our platform, may use it to get industry certification, right? XtremeLabs themselves, we only provide what would be considered as completion certification. So we can just tell you, look, you started it, you ended it, you finished every element of it. But the learning paths that you might be on could take you down the path where you may become a Amazon Web Services certified associate architect, right? Or you may become a sort of a high-end architect or advanced programmer for machine learning offered by Microsoft or VMware or CompTIA. So lots and lots of other, sort of certification organizations that are out there. We sort of focus on assembling the right sort of technologies and tools that people need to learn, and then sort of hand them over to different academic institutions, to different enterprises, to different training companies, and then they sort of decide what certification they may ultimately target.
Okay. Now, this was more of sort of like a bird's eye view or a holistic view of what skills gap there may be and how XtremeLabs is assisting them. Say, for example, somebody, a layman or well, like myself, or a young university graduate comes up and wants to get on into, say, for example, a computer science graduate, for that matter, right? Comes up and wants to do something in machine learning or AI or whatever programs there may be on offer, right? What advice would you have for such an aspiring person who wants to start his career into the technology space?
So there's a couple of different advice that I would give them. Right, one is take a look at what you studied. Right, look at the entire 4 years or whatever your study program was. Look at the different projects that you did there, and then build a portfolio. So a lot of times, you might be in a class and you may be given projects. You do those projects and you sort of forget about them, right? No, you sort of go back and you look at your entire 4 years that you did, and look at each of the individual things that you did there, and then build that portfolio, right? And then look at that portfolio and figure out, which of those sort of different things that you learned and actual projects you did with those different types of technologies or topics you liked, where you were weak, where you could sort of build yourself up in, and then sort of fill in those gaps there, right? So you may say, look, I went through a 4-year computer science degree, and what I really, really liked was actually getting into sort of the guts of microprocessors, right? Or programming, wasn't super exciting to me. I really liked sort of working on operating systems, right? So you have to sort of make those particular choices and look at your education experience to figure out what were the things that worked for you, right? Then the second sort of aspect, once you sort of develop your understanding of your capabilities, and then you sort of fill in the gaps there, right? So if you feel that, look, I really like this particular topic, I'm very interested in it, I don't feel comfortable in it, then you can come to a platform like XtremeLabs, and then we can sort of work with you to sort of fill in those particular gaps, right? And at the end of that, you're getting another thing added to your portfolio of work that you've assembled so far. And the combination of that, so your formal education and then your portfolio, is sort of what gets you ready for that first job that's out there in the market, right?
Okay. Interesting thing. You were talking earlier before our formal conversation started. You told me that your backend office or backend ops team is based out of Pakistan. So that's very interesting. Can you shed some light on that?
Yeah, so we about 2.5 years ago, right before the pandemic started,
Mm-hmm.
I sort of made a strategic decision that I wanted to sort of move all of our development work as well as a lot of the content work that we do to Pakistan. And I had over the years, I had sort of done some work in Pakistan, starting way back in 1996, 97.
Mm-hmm.
And then after September 11th, there's just not a lot of appetite in the US to move work to Pakistan. So we ended up doing a lot of work in India and Costa Rica and Belgium and in China. But this time around, I was like, no, we sort of really need to take a serious look again at what's sort of going on in Pakistan. So a couple of years, but 2.5 years ago, we sort of kicked off that initiative. I sort of came to Pakistan, went to different cities, and sort of revived all my original contacts from 20, 30 years ago, and we set up shop in Islamabad. I hired the initial 2 or 3 people, and then they hired the rest of the team. So apart from the 2 or 3 initial people that we recruited from the market, everybody else that we brought on after that were brought on by this core team, and I think almost 90% of the time there were people that they knew and they trusted, and then they assembled that team together. And for us, it's sort of been a phenomenal experience. So you talk about skills gap and you talk about those things. We were actually quite fortunate that we were able to get the really talented people, not only from sort of knowing the technology, but more importantly, really from the energy level and the excitement level and the work ethic level, which is far more important than some of the technology skills, because we can always train for those. And we've had a phenomenal sort of set of results, since we've kind of transitioned over to Pakistan. It's not necessarily the easiest thing. There's a lot of sort of things that you sort of have to go through, and we can talk about them if you like. But the talent is there, and and I'm sort of real proof that it is it's something that can be really, really built on right now.
Okay, that's great. So, about the team that's based out of Pakistan, all the learning matters that go on XtremeLabs, right? Is all the education material and all the training and everything, is that provided by the team in Pakistan?
The team, so just so that you understand, sort of our particular model, we work with companies like Microsoft and VMware. So we're their official sort of partner in this particular initiative. So they will sort of either provide us sort of the base content, or we will work with them to develop the content. But it is developed and built, and the hands-on environments are all built in Pakistan right now.
Okay, that's great. So, what does XtremeLab have to offer? This is the final question. What does it have to offer to bridge the skills gap within Pakistan? Right, Pakistan, the IT industry is actually, it's safe to say that it's actually exploding within the country, right? IT related exports, records are being broken every quarter, right? And it's expected before the target was set at about 5 billion worth of exports from the IT sector by 2025, and just today I read that it's expected to cross 7 billion, right? So they've revised their targets. So what does XtremeLabs have to offer in your words, I know that it has a lot, but in your words, what,
Yeah.
like, how can it assist in reaching that goal and bridging this skills gap?
Yeah, so what we have to offer is really partnership opportunities with the different people that are focused on workforce development, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you have the Ministry of IT, both at the federal level and the provincial level, sort of focusing on seeding the market right
Mm-hmm.
now by running different types of programs like boot camps
Mm-hmm.
to essentially just seed the market, right? They don't want to own the market; they just want to seed it,
Mm-hmm.
sort of few of those things. So we are sort of perfect partners for those type of organizations, right? There are nonprofits like the Institute of Emerging Careers that basically sort of runs training programs. They don't charge the students, and the students sort of pay once they actually get a job.
Mm-hmm.
So we are partners with them in sort of providing the technical solutions so people can learn effectively and be ready for those future skills.
Mm-hmm.
Similarly, with academic institutions, right? We have students from academic institutions in Pakistan using XtremeLabs today.
Mm-hmm.
We don't necessarily have any partnerships with academic institutions, but we know that students themselves are taking the initiative and using our platform right now in those academic institutions. So there's a lot of opportunities to work with the academic institutions and work on those programs. We've had super success with working with the Polytechnic Institutes in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And there are about 6 or 7 of them that are doing workforce development, and they've been super successful in using our platform to getting the workforce ready. I think there's a ton of opportunity to work in Pakistan with similar institutions as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then and then finally, so not only are we doing this, but in America there's a saying which says you're eating your own dog food, right?
Yeah.
So we're not only sort of giving a platform to train people, but in Pakistan, but we are also using people in Pakistan to build our product, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have confidence in the ability to sort of upscale and leverage that market for our own benefit as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's great to know, Ahmar Saab. It was wonderful talking to you. It was great having you on the talk. I see that XtremeLabs is doing a wonderful thing in bridging skills gaps all across the world. You told me that it's there in over 100 countries where people are using it and upskilling themselves. So anybody who watches this, I would actually have a message for them too, that they should get on the platform, right, and start learning to build wonderful things in the digital space. And best of luck to everybody with that. So once again, Ahmar Saab, thank you very much for being on Startup Talks. It was great talking to you. Hopefully, if you're in Pakistan again, maybe we should touch base and meet in person. And if is there anything I can assist with in my personal capacity within Pakistan to XtremeLabs, right? I'd be happy to do so. Thank you
And
very much.
thank you very much. And again, Tamil, compliments to you on running the startup talks. I've listened to a ton of them, and I find them super useful and enjoyable as well. So congratulations on this effort, and inshallah we should be in Pakistan in middle of February. So we
Mhm.
will definitely
Just
connect then.
just ping me and we'll catch up then.
Okay. All
Thank you
right.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice day, sir.
Okay.
Allah
Bye
Hafiz.
bye.
Allah Hafiz.